Welcome to our ordination ceremony. Today, we welcome 8 new ministers into a tradition that dates back more than 4,000 years in the esoteric tradition called Apostolic Succession. Our 8 candidates for ordination have undergone a year of training with fellowship ministers to prepare them for this moment when they will accept the mantle of responsibility and service to our fellowship community. The tradition of ordination begins in recorded history with the ordination by Abraham by Melchizedek in a desert place. Abraham first was named Ab, being trained as an initiate of the moon from the wise men of Chaldea. He traveled then to Egypt to become an initiate of the sun, then adding the Egyptian god Ra to his name, becoming Abram. Abram, having become an initiate of the moon and an initiate of the sun, then traveled to a desert place, meaning he emptied himself of his knowings and asked a question, saying, "There must be something greater than the sun and the moon that set the sun and moon in ocean. That is what I seek to know." And thus appeared, coming out of that desert place, the King of Salem, the man without beginning or endings of days, Melchizedek, the Christ Spirit, the priest of I Am. And Abram thus became Abraham. He was taught there the ritual of communion and the principle of the tithe. And Abraham, together with his son Isaac and grandson Jacob, became the fathers of the Jewish nation. The second ordination, recorded in biblical history, was described in the relationship between the prophets Elijah and Elisha. When Elijah was ready to die, he told his apprentice Elisha to stay behind, to leave him. But Elisha insisted that he stay with his master as long and as far as he could. Elisha's initiation was whether or not he could see Elijah being taken up in a fiery chariot. Elisha did see him leave, and as a result, Elijah passed the mantle of responsibility to him. This is the story of the relationship between a master and his apprentice. It is the dream of every master that his apprentice surpass even his abilities. And thus it was with the relationship between Elijah and Elisha. For it is said that Elijah was reincarnated in the soul of John the Baptist, and Elisha was the soul who became Jesus the Christ. The passing of the mantle has continued then from Jesus Christ to his apostles, then from Paul the apostle to Timothy. It is told that Paul the apostle received ordination and was anointed by Jesus himself in the caves of the Holy Land after the resurrection. Paul the apostle passed the mantle of responsibility to Timothy, saying, "You are my credentials. The students of the teacher are his credentials." The line has continued in what is called apostolic succession through all these years. The fellowship of the Inner Light continues to pass the mantle in the line of apostolic succession. Though Paul Solomon was first ordained as a Baptist minister when he was only 16 years old, his apostolic initiation came many years later by the initiate Manly Palmer Hall, author of the Secret Teachings of All Ages and many other great esoteric works. Thus, our ordination today continues with the tradition begun with Abraham and Melchizedek. Each ministerial candidate is cloaked in a white robe, symbolic of covering all that is earth. So the ministers are presented as an expression of purity. During the ordination ceremony, each minister will be given a stole, which is the mantle of responsibility to one's own growth and in service to others. Each minister will be anointed with oil, which is the transfer of vitality in the apostolic succession. This is not symbolic. This is a true transfer of vitality. If any of you is clairvoyant, as we transfer this vitality, you'll see that this is a true ordination, in that in the moment of ordination, an additional connection opens between the person being ordained and the heavens of God. An energy, a power, a vitality enters into the new minister, increasing his or her ability to serve as representative of God here on earth. You will soon hear the song of the charge to the apostles, So Send I You, sung by Chris Van Cleve. This song was written by Paul Solomon for the musical The Davidson Affair, the story of what could happen if Jesus were born today. It begins with a Spanish couple arriving in New York City. The woman is about to give birth, and there is no room in all the hotels. The child is born in the boiler room of the Waldorf Astoria, a famous hotel in New York City. I was privileged to be there when Paul and Chris worked together on the Davidson Affair. Chris was a part of what was called the Synthesis Program, a month-long experience in spiritual transformation at our then retreat center in the Shenandoah Valley, Hearthfire Lodge. I was Paul's secretary at the time. Paul and Chris would be up in the late hours of the night, or more like the early hours of the morning. Paul would write the words and Chris would write the music. At the end of the program, we were all, after Paul wrote the words for the song that we were about to hear, So Send I You, it was really late at night. And Paul handed Chris the words. We were still in Hearthfire Lodge in the Shenandoah Valley, and Paul handed Chris the words, and he said, "Can you write the music by tomorrow morning?" And this was Jesus' charge to the apostles. And Chris looked at him, "Are you crazy?" But when we arrived in Virginia Beach, Chris said, "I got it." And So Send I You was born. And you're going to hear that song, So Send I You, which Chris has sang at ordinations ever since. But before that, our senior pastor, Bruce Shelton, is going to talk about what it means to be a minister of the Fellowship of the Inner Light.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Well, today, the 8 of you are going to be ordained as ministers in our church. How do you feel right now? If you can see their faces, that says everything, right? And each of you has now completed what amounted to a 13-month seminary program, which has prepared you for today's ordination. And the big question now is, what's next? You know, the day really is the beginning of your ministry. And so the question is, what am I going to do with my ministry? You know, what does it even mean to be a minister? And 40 years ago, in 1984, I was ordained in this very spot by Paul Solomon, along with Robert Krajinski. And I asked myself that question. And I have found over the years that what has helped me more than anything else in terms of understanding what a minister is and what my work is my role model is the Lord Jesus. Jesus is the perfect role model, you see, of the perfect minister. He's the minister of the entire world. He's minister of all humanity. And so I've used Jesus as my model. And Jesus in Acts 10:38, Peter was talking to a group of folks just like you, and he's trying to tell everybody about who this man Jesus was. And he says, he, meaning Jesus, went about doing good and healing all who were oppressed by darkness, for God was with him. Now, that to me is an entire philosophy of the ministry, of what it's all about. He went about doing good. That summarizes Jesus' entire life, from, at least that we know about in his public ministry. Helping people, trying to make his best to make this world a better place, to basically save us all. Because everybody was lost then, and we're lost now. And each time we get lost in our minds and our egos. And it says, healing all who were oppressed by darkness. And so his whole work was helping others who were lost. Do you ever feel that way yourself in this room? Not just the ministers, but everybody. We all feel lost sometimes, lost in darkness. And the key here, the most important part of this whole verse is, for God was with him. And that's the key to everything in terms of being a successful minister. If we don't have that connection with God, then we're lost. We're lost individually, and we certainly can't help others, right? And so it's so important, which really saved me all these years, is this whole of having spiritual practices every day. I put aside time every day just to be with God, to do my prayers, do my meditations. And this is the most important thing I've ever learned in my life, because with God, I have unlimited energy. With my mind, if I'm just only got my mind, it's very limited. And that's how we all eventually the world wears us down, And so getting that spiritual connection, you see, and it's so simple. And that one of the big things Jesus taught us was how to pray. Just talk to God like he's our best friend, And so that's the most important piece I can pass on to you is, and some of you are already doing this, just put aside a little bit of time every day. For me, an hour it works perfectly. But 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, we make time for everything else, don't we? We certainly make time to eat and to watch television and to talk to people, our friends, and let's make a little time in our lives for God. And so one of the other most important things about being a minister is that being a minister has nothing to do with power and prestige. Gosh, aren't people going to think I'm neat? I can even call myself reverend now, right? It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with humility and service to others, helping others. Jesus says, he who is first shall be last, he who is last shall be first. And I love that beatitude, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. They shall inherit the earth means they'll have dominion over the world, over their life. And meekness is translated it means humility. And so that's why Jesus placed so much importance upon teaching us all about the importance of humility and serving others. So being a minister is all about service, trying to help others. But it's so important to have that connection with God, because if it's just my mind, I'm out trying to help people, what happens is we burn out. If I'm going out trying to do good in the world, but I don't have that connection with God to strengthen me, eventually I run out of energy. And I can say that for over 5 decades, I was a counselor and a therapist. And the thing that kept me going and made me continue with the work, when everybody else retired from the probation and parole office, I said, I want to be a counselor. Everybody said, you crazy? Everybody wanted to run as far away from people as they could. And I want to be an actor or something, in Williamsburg, one of the probation officers said. But I love the work helping people. And it was only because of that daily time I put aside every day to re-energize myself and connect. And then I had the energy, to go forth in the day and try to do good and try to help people. And so that's my part of this talk. I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that's helpful to you.
This is the charge of responsibility that Paul Solomon gave to the last seminary class that he ordained in 1993 in Connecticut. He died within the year. And I charge you with this responsibility in the words of Paul Solomon. I charge you with the responsibility of going out into the world that doesn't smile enough and doesn't laugh enough. So I send you out with the responsibility to forget the look that is serious and worried. I want people to see you laugh, bring laughter into a worried world. I send you to a world of poverty, but poverty is not money or food. It is a poverty of love. And if I challenge you with the greatest of responsibilities, it would be that you find a way to prove to yourself and to other people that the power of love is actually stronger, greater than the power of fear, the power of weapons, which are instruments of fear. All of you have spoken of teaching, of counseling, and of healing. I charge you with the responsibility of remembering that people do not need answers from you. They need to be listened to. The wise of old have said, there is nothing new that you can teach to anyone. You can only remind them of what they know. That is the responsibility I charge you with. Listen to them. Tell you what they need to know. Repeat it back to them, so they will teach themselves through you. Though you have studied now for a year and you have learned well, it is not for you to go out and tell people how to live or how to think, but rather to go out as if you know nothing. Listen, love, laugh, and know that people know the truth. You won't be like other people if you listen more than you talk, and if you love more than you fear, and if you laugh more than you worry. You won't be ordinary. You won't be average, and people will notice that. They will think you wise. You need not prove it in any other way. You have a body. The body is a vehicle for traveling. I charge you with the responsibility of offering that vessel, that vehicle to Christ. We need Christ alive now. We need God in the flesh now. Give your body, give yourself for God to express through you. And then, as Christ said, don't think a lot about what you're going to say. If you know that God is alive in you, open your mouth and God will speak. I hold you responsible for remembering that you can't heal anyone, but you can empower anyone to heal themselves. Your love will help to heal them, but particularly if you can teach them to love themselves, they will stay healed and whole. It is their love, not yours, that matters. It is their ability to heal, not yours, that is important. So you now receive a mantle of responsibility. I hope you will remember to be humble. Being ordained does not make you special. The mantle is a mantle of responsibility. And if we seem to be empowering you, it is only so that you go out from here and empower others. Ordained ministers will put the mantle of responsibility on your shoulders, then anoint you with oil. The word Christ means the anointed one. When we anoint you, we hold you responsible for being Christ. When we touch you with oil, we are saying to the world, this is the second coming. Christ is in this body. You are anointed.